you're greater than 10,000 in population, you are now part of the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System program, NPDES. That program is a federal program that's administered in the state by the DNR, and they require, amongst other things, these 6 minimum control measures, which I've listed there. And those are things that the city is obligated to do on an annual basis. And in fact, just yesterday, the DNR sent out a report reminder saying, hey, all of you covered communities, you've got a report that's due by the end of March describing all of these activities that you're undertaking for these 6 minimum control measures. They include public education and involvement, getting the word out to people that water quality is important, and this is what they can individually do. Conducting illicit discharge program, which is to say you operate a storm sewer system and only stormwater is supposed to go down there. So if it's ever observed that there's like a cross connection between sanitary and the storm, that's got to be eliminated. You have to have a construction site and a post-construction stormwater program. So developers come in as they're doing construction or after construction is done, you've got to be preserving and protecting. And then finally, item number 6 is this pollution prevention plan. At the EPA level, the pollution prevention plan just means that the city is going to operate kind of a clean ship. You're going to have good practices for your sand and salt storage for situations like you've got going on outside tonight. If you've got public facilities where you're doing fertilizing, you're not over-fertilizing and letting those nutrients get into the waterways, things like that. It's all about just operating a clean, non-polluting city. In Wisconsin, due to some legal pressures, threats of lawsuits to be specific, they have instituted what's called numerical standards, which is to say part of your good housekeeping program is identifying exactly precisely what level of water quality compliance you're at. And they quantified that by saying you need to have a 2-tiered plan, and this kind of goes back in time a little bit. By 2008, you had to have a 20% reduction in total suspended solids relative to doing nothing. And by 2013, you had to be at 40%. Now that total suspended solids is like grits and sands and particles in stormwater, and it's relative to doing nothing. So it wasn't like you had to do 20% better than you were. You just had to do 20% relative to doing nothing. So your street sweeping program, catch basins, things like that, existing detention ponds, all those things work to make it better. In 2003, you hired a consultant to do an assessment of the city's program and see where you're at. And I'm not going to talk about that because in 2010, you had a revision done. And that revision said, hey, you know what? You're at 29.5% TSS reduction, or total suspended solids reduction, which meant you were in compliance with the 2008 standard, but you had yet a little distance to go to the 2013 standard. Well, the plan identified a whole number of things you could do to get there, and you probably are familiar with it, but the 2 big items were to construct this Claggett Avenue pond and to construct a pond along East Main Street. They were not cheap, but by doing those 2 things, or by getting those 2 things built, you'd then be in compliance with the 40% standard. Well, everyone probably recalls when the governorship changed hands, 40% standard was sort of taken off the books. It's actually still on the books. It just has an infinite compliance schedule, so you just sort of have to always kind of be working towards it. The catch of that, though, is you're at 29.5% TSS reduction right now. You're not allowed to sort of go backwards to the 20%. You got to stay at where you're at. But there isn't really a compliance schedule for it, or at least there wasn't, or there isn't right now, and there's about to be. So if we kind of go forward to the end of 2011, so 2011, the beginning of it, like February, legislator removed the 40% standard. Well, at the end of October, EPA approved the Rock River total maximum daily load. So there's this huge watershed, encompasses many, many communities, lots of the state. The whole kind of south central part of the state really drains to the Rock River, which goes down through Janesville and Beloit. The TMDL, the total maximum daily load study, said, hey, remember those 40% standards? Well, our study kind of incorporated those. And so even though they've been removed from a state administrative code perspective, they're sort of back on the books because they're part of this total maximum daily load. And now this is where, if you look at the back, things get a little bit more complicated. So it's just a map of the city. And it's the city boundary, just for those of you who are really particular about things, came from the census. So it's probably not exactly precisely the city boundary that the state's got on file, but nonetheless, it's pretty darn close. And the red lines that crisscross it are different watersheds that are part of the Rock River overall larger watershed. So under NR 216 and NR 151, you had to get 20% or 40% uniformly across the city. Well, this total maximum daily load study is a little bit more scientific. They're looking at, all right, this water body has these unique characteristics which are different from this other water body. And what they found was, for the bulk of the city, for the west half of the city, you know, if you just did a little bit better than NR 151 with planning, if you get 40.6%, the DNR feels that water quality goals would be met. But for the eastern sort of sliver of the city and the southern part of the city, the 40% standard fell pretty far short, and they want you to be up to 55.6%. These are standards that kind of alluded to, they're not on the books just yet, but literally any minute, the DNR is going to renew the statewide NPDES permit, at which point the TMDL standards are going to be referenced, and you're going to have to do this. So you're kind of living in a little bit of a reprieve right now, because the only standard on the books is 20%, and it's documented that you're above that. But very soon, you're going to sort of be back in the grist again, and you're going to have to start moving towards water quality improvements. And that's going to take you up to at least 55.6% for part of the city. So that kind of takes me to sort of the end of the presentation. Dick just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware, you know, haven't been talking stormwater quality too much lately, but it's really becoming more and more of a topic. I'll tell you, I'm sitting on an implementation panel with the DNR, and they are in the process of writing the rules for how communities like the city of Waupun develops plans to meet the TMDL standards. They're not all that different to what before, but there's some, you know, ins and outs that are a little bit different. But as far as, you know, where you're sitting today, you're okay, but there's going to be a need to have a revised plan in the future. And as luck would have it, tomorrow a grant cycle opens up that the DNR offers that they actually fund compliance plans. And I just wanted to kind of call your attention to the fact that it's out there. It's a pretty lucrative program. It provides a pretty decent cost share, 70% relative to a 30%. And that grant can be used to cover all the things that you need to do for the. So I've reached the bottom of my page, and I'm probably at least 4 minutes, so I don't want to go too much farther. But if you have questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them.
Eric, if I could just say it, Eric's got up on the right side. Did you cover this?
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, it's a good point.
That's one thing that they're going around doing. They're starting with the large. And I just received the email dealing with their audit. So it's going to be coming here to us. So they might go out to the shop. Kits are, you know what to do. I'm assuming. Here, I met with the DNR and all the paperwork that we've been sending on the last few years, and basically was an audit on that. They are doing their.
Yeah, it's kind of it's sort of a big deal. MSA's got offices in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. And the EPA about 2 years ago came up the Mississippi River and hit up all the communities that on Illinois and Iowa, and they were big deals. They sat in their offices for like 3 days, you know, going through everything. It was very, very intensive, and a lot of those communities got hit with consent decrees to actually do stuff. It wasn't just like, hey, get your plan up to date. It was no, these things by these court orders. So, you know, not to put too much fear into you, but it really is kind of a serious deal.
That's good to know there's grants out there now to apply for.
Yes, yeah, you know, the grants have been drying up, but last few years they've been getting to be more and more lucrative. So.
Any questions at all? Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council at this time? Oh, fire. Okay, we have you over under motions. We can move that up right now, couldn't we?
Do whatever you want.
Okay. Is it all right with the council?
Sure.
Okay, sure. We will do that right now. This is for the credit appeal for Farmers Elevator.
I didn't bring a whole lot of supporting documentation tonight. I'm assuming that the council is aware of. I am here to request the credit. Stormwater utility did deny. This is regarding our property at 1350 West Brown. A stormwater or water study done by Stormwater Solutions of Milwaukee, so that we could determine what happens to the property. Came back with a report saying that the water runs to the south Down Street property up at the end of Down Street. And so that water, that runoff from that property does go on to agricultural land. It does not directly enter the stormwater system of Waupun. That I made to first to Flynn and then to the stormwater utility. I was denied on main point that according to the code, it's not in a abatement or some type of activity that is performed on the property to run off, and a credit would not be allowed. Something that slows the runoff according to the code has to be on the property. It's the primary reason that my request was denied. So, and I understand that this would have to be variance or what, but it's something that is not something that, it is something that goes against what the says has to be done. Said that water from that property does not run directly to the stormwater system. The slope of the land or on something study 10-year rainfall. I don't know the exact number, but it's a 6 or 7 inch rainfall period. Stormwater Solutions report 71% from such an event not enter the stormwater system. It goes on to set an agricultural land south of the property that eventually run into a drainage ditch, which flows to the east and eventually enters Harris Creek. So, 10-year event, 71% of the water does not reach that drainage ditch or the I understand what the policy is or the code is. I guess it doesn't change the fact that whatever conditions are out there or does not reach the system. I feel that it's right that we can't get some type of a credit as a runoff from our property. It's not costing the city or stormwater, something physically on our property, something that is happening on the township. The other concerns that the stormwater utility brought up was that there would be several other properties that border township land. Credit was granted, and I was informed that no credits have been granted, and that is adjacent to the townships. Credit was granted that there would be several more requests for that credit from other land property owners. And I guess I don't believe that would happen because of the cost with supplying a stormwater study or a study performed by hydrologists or whatever, which is one of the requirements for applying for the credit. Cost prohibitive, I believe it's reasonable cost for us to apply for this credit and get this study done, size of our property, of our stormwater utility bill. I don't know what this study would cost for any other property, but for us, the cost was $1,871. Something that our landowner have a property adjacent to a township. I for this credit because the cost would be, benefit would be a lot of property owners who have less property than what we have up there. I don't have any other arguments. It just seems to me that the city is not burdened by most of the water that 71% of the water is contained, and 71% of a 6-inch rainfall, 1.5 inches. Have a 4.5-inch, into my thought thinking on that. If we have a 4.5-inch rainfall, 24-hour period, that is how much water is contained in a 6-inch rainfall. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of water in the system, city system at any time.
Steve or Dick, would you like to add anything additional?
No, Mr. Mulder. He denied it. Say more than, there's nothing retained on his property to show stormwater.
It's the property south. That's
It is, right, his property south of his property.
yes. Council, any questions at all for Mr. Mulder?
Byron, I have a question. In looking at your documentation by your firm that you hired, in looking at the overview, do I understand it with the buildings and so forth that a majority of this area being light colored, is that gravel then? And the percentage, I think it was 53% that you're requesting a reduction is based on what? By the percentage of the water that is, your company feels that it's being retained on your property?
Yes, 71%. I haven't even confirmed these numbers, but 71% reduction are requesting. I mean, the maximum amount that we could be allowed would be 75%. So if there's a 71% reduction, 75%, that would calculate out, I think, 250.
But you haven't actually done anything on your property, correct, to reduce anything since this came into effect? Okay.
And that is one of the thinking in common sense terms, I guess. If we would go out and buy that property next to our property, then that would be something that is happening on our property. If we don't own it,
I believe
I just want to clarify that if this person, they still have to do some type of.
something different than what it is now.
Correct, it couldn't.
Right. Understand that.
So it's really based on the topography of the land, of how that property is set up, that everything just kind of flows to the south. into that field? Is that what I'm
I
seeing
think
with the
it's
image?
just lay the land there,
Okay.
yes.
South, so it doesn't.
Probably sheet strings, part of the pit, down to the south.
Questions?
Yeah, what are some of the examples of like physical man-made that are for some properties where they actually apply and are offered the
If you look at Gateway,
Okay.
the ponds that were
Ponds.
made.
oh, actual catch pond?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So what the ball fields are east.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Will there be an issue?
Yes, they're going to ask, I'm going to ask them for a decision. Council, what are your thoughts?
I know you asked Eric if he had any comments, but I'm sorry, I didn't see if you had any acknowledge or any wish to make a comment.
Sure. Sorry, say what you gotta say, Eric, but Eric, in here?
Yeah, Dick forwarded this on to me, must have been the end of September, because I think the prepared and dated August 27th, so, it's got a little bit of life to it. Dick sent it to me, and I reviewed it, and I found that the calculations and whatnot were in order, but the fundamental issue here is that the practice, and I'm using that term loosely, the practice that provides the flow reduction is not located on the property. And so the conclusion that I had in this memo that I wrote to Dick dated October 2nd was that it's recommended that the stormwater utility credit application be denied because the management practice providing the peak flow control is not located on the applicant's property and does not satisfy the stormwater utility credit eligibility requirements. I felt that that was enough of an argument right there to stop, but Dick made a good point in his address to you guys just now, that the credit policy actually states very specifically that it's got to be privately constructed and maintained. So the fact that it's just a natural low area sort of makes it fail on two.
Okay, I'll ask the council for a motion.
If I may address one more question in regards, you're saying that your recommendation at this point still stands, that you deny that we should be denying this. Okay, thank you.
May I make one other? System. City or the storm. So I says, and it's on what the code says.
Right.
If I recall, Byron, is this the old Aronson property? Has there ever been soil testing or anything out there? Is there any worry about all your stuff running into this farm field and then down the maze or the ditch, creek, considering there's old scrap metal and oil and everything else out on that property for a long, long time. Has there ever been any?
Counsel?
I think, me personally, due to the fact that I'm sure out of the 6 of us, 8 of us on this council, property in town, I'm pretty sure each one of us could get a study in. Some would have more solids going to the flow and some would have less. It's kind of averages out, unfortunately, for people who have bigger properties. I might pay more than I should. Pete might pay less than he should. Brian might pay more. I just feel like we'd be setting a precedence for everybody to try to get reductions, without having done any ponds or anything else. So I'd be in support of denying the deal.
Are you making that a motion, Steve?
Well, I guess we have to have a second before we have the discussion. So for that reason alone, I'll second it.
I'm asking if it was a motion.
Yes, I said yes.
Oh, I didn't see. I'm sorry, Steve. Okay, we have a motion by Steve to deny the appeal and a second from Pete. Additional discussion.
My comment is, first of all, I want to thank Byron for going to this level of concern. I'll sort of reiterate a little bit of what Steve was saying is, since we have at least 6 people here that are not experts in at least in this field, we have to rely on the consultants that we would contract or have business with. So for that reason, I would base my second of that motion is because I'm going with our consultation with MSA and their letter that's in here and their reasoning that they set forth in there. So I would thank you for your effort that has been brought forward, but for that reason, as well as the reason that Steve had said with any abutting property, as you referred to too, that would adjoin from the city to the township, it could be potentially subject to following the same process. It might be cost prohibitive, but it certainly would be an option, and I think we would potentially be opening up a lot of concern with that if that was to follow.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Will you do roll call, please?
Steve Bastian.
Aye.
Aye.
Nancy Bailey.
Aye.
Aye.
Brian Murphy.
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is no one else here for any public participation, so we will move on to boards, committee, and commission meetings. Brett, do you have anything additional?
Nothing to add, Mayor.
Okay. Tomorrow is the meeting for the Plan Commission, and the only thing on our agenda tomorrow night is another addition onto Guth's Candy. So that will be taken care of tomorrow. Steve, did you have anything additional from zoning? No? Okay. Nancy, how about fire and police? Everything in the...
We had a meeting. Well,
Nothing additional from the minutes? Okay.
nothing much new. To speak up.
Okay. Randy, anything additional from your utility commission? Okay, thank you. Move on to the consent agenda. There's only one thing I want to, with Kyle's, the city administrator, we talked about Tony's presentation that he's going to be giving at the COW meeting on the Meadowview property. If you guys have any questions, make sure you bring them for Tony on that. Bring your, copy off your papers that was given to us from Tony and bring them to the meeting so we can ask the questions that we had at that time. And you can call Kyle too if you want to before that time. He might be able to answer.
I sent an email out, I think last week or the week before. He'll have some larger poster boards available for that presentation. And I think he'll have some additional handouts so you have something to kind of work off of.
Do you have any updates on TIF 6 with your meeting with Greg Smith back? I know that was a couple months ago, I think back in June.
No. We had been working with actually a couple local businesses for potential development out in that area, and both of them have withdrawn from consideration, so haven't had any follow-up meetings with Greg on that at all. Unfortunately, they both decided
to pull
out.
Okay. Anything else that you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. All right. I see nothing else under the communications. Does anyone from council have anything that they wanted to or pull before?
Just one, I was representing the dispatchers at the Dodge County Executive Law Enforcement Association banquet the other night, and I see our Chief Dale Hurricka and Scott Loudon was there, and I apologize if there was more than that. But I want to compliment their attendance, and I believe they're, even that icy night as it was one of 107 people.
I didn't know about it.
Oh, and it was well attended by about 107 people, including corrections. It's all encompassing law enforcement, and I want to compliment that we had two representatives, at least two, that I'm aware of from our police department there, and even though they weren't a recipient, they were to support other people that did win.
That was the same award with
Yep. Right. Those are nice. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know about it this year.
Was it in your budget to take us?
Well, I can in the future.
Terrible night.
Okay.
But like Pete's saying, it's
a terrible night.
Good work of law enforcement.
Anything else under communications? If not, I ask for a motion to approve consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Steve,
I'll second it.
seconded by Nancy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We've already taken care of the stormwater credit appeal. Move on to the payment of the bills. Any questions for Angie? We need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to pay the bills.
Motion by Julie to pay the bills of the month.
I'll second that.
Second by Mike. Roll call, please.
Steve Bastian.
Aye.
Aye.
Nancy Van.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Other business, we have operators licenses. Great. Okay, so we would need a motion for the operators licenses. Is the Class B okay too? Okay, we'll put it all into one then.
I'll make a motion to.
Motion by Nancy,
I'll second.
second by Mike to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. We have nothing for closed session this evening, so all we need is a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Motion by Julie.
And I'll second it.
Second by Ryan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Everybody watch Julie on TV this week.